Hi there, Rebus Forever here. I'm going to be opening the German fleet today for Cruel Seas by Warlord Games. One of the great things about Warlord Games, or the Cruel Seas specifically in this instance, is the ability to use ships from pretty much any appropriately scaled system in this game, but they also sell their own. So let's be having a gander at what they look like. I realised I've only got a day or so until Battlefleet Gothic 2 comes out, and that's going to be taking up an awful lot of my time. So this feels a tiny bit more against the clock than it might otherwise. Anyway, back to today, and we've got the German Kriegsmarine fleet. On the back you've got some decent colour pictures, which effectively serve as your only instructions, so don't forget to keep the box. Unfortunately, the box is open lengthways, rather than sort of traditionally lifting off the top, so they're not great for storage. But what do you get inside? First off, we've got some flags. I mistakenly thought these were transfers to begin with, but apparently they're just sort of card that you stick onto the metal flags. I feel a bit naive for assuming that they were transfers originally. But then again, I've literally never heard of getting bits of card that you stick onto a model before. Here we have the Flagship, which I'm a fan of because I quite like the converted trawler look. The M-class Minesweeper. And after that, just various class of S-boat. No stat card for the aeroplane because it works more like a weapon than a unit in of itself, albeit a clever weapon. Next up we have Warlord Games' best impression of an instruction booklet. It's a bit inadequate to be honest, and I've seen lots of people who feel the same. Much more comprehensive is the advertisement on the back. Here we have the tokens for keeping track of the hull of your ships on the stat cards, and the wakes. It's a pretty flimsy card, but I guess it doesn't need to be super stable. This is for the largest vessels. Mine came bent in shipping, but that's basically because everything's loose in the box. You do get some more plumes, which are handy. It's reassuring to know that if you had only bought the rulebook, you would be able to augment your collection with torpedo tokens and plumes to make play possible. And here's a little bit more smoke and fire and such. I think it's really good that they contain these gameplay components in the expansions. Some other companies, whose name might rhyme with James Birthstop, can sometimes be a bit neglectful when it comes to enabling gameplay without a core box being purchased. Next up, it's sprue time. These are the S-boats. You get a new one and an old one on each sprue. Nothing really to complain about with these. They are perfectly reasonable. Well done, these sprues. Here's an example of some very averagely painted S-boats. One on the left is the older version, and the one I just popped down, that's the newer up-armoured version. These are your two standard light units if you're the Germans, based on the ships that are released so far. And here's the more modern version, slightly up-armoured and slightly up-gunned. Nice little units. Definitely sooner field a couple of these than the British Vespers. Next up, we have the first of the larger ships. This is the Flagship. It's perfectly reasonable. It's unfortunately a tiny bit warped. Doesn't sit entirely flat. Although it couldn't possibly sit entirely flat at the moment, because at the moment there's enough plastic spare on the bottom to build another battleship. And the M-class has pretty much the same problem. Requires quite a bit of tidying up, but you could probably knock out a dolphin with it. It's a solid lump of plastic. You have a few plastic components and metal components for each ship. Again, quite untidy casting, and that will pop on there and it will stay better than I just succeeded at putting there. There's a whole load of metal components. Anyone intending to buy one of these fleet boxes had best have a reasonable collection of glues. The moulding on individual parts isn't terrible. I've yet to really judge the quality of the detail because I haven't had any sort of magnifying glass out whilst I've been painting. It's going to be nice to get some crew on board the vessels to make them look a bit more populated. It's a nice addition. Well done, Warlord Games. Some deck guns. And these are the metal flags that I'm under the impression I'm supposed to be sticking the card to. Which just feels a little bit sort of preschool. Free bit of sharp, jagged metal. And another mast. These all require a bit of straightening, so be prepared to do that. I have read quite a few instances of people saying that they've had metal components arrive bent or just completely broken. All of my metal components required some gentle coercion to point in the right direction. This is the selection of metal components for the Flagship. More crew. You can sort of see that they're detailed there. Either way, you know, at this scale, detail isn't necessarily as expected, and it's just really nice to have some crew on board. Plenty of those. Next up, just some funnels and various details. There's the gun pit. More flags. I'll get my PVA glue out. Another mast. But, you know, I've got to count myself lucky. I haven't had any broken masts, and I imagine they're going to be pretty fragile, being filtered through the world's postal services. And more guns. As said, to stand any chance of putting together your ships in a reasonable fashion, you're going to need to be looking at images online. You're going to need to keep your box. If it's got a picture of one of your ships on it, don't throw it. I used the rulebook to get most of my ships together in a way I was relatively confident was correct. If anyone sees any incorrect weapon placements later on when I show the assembled ships, do point that out to people in the comments, just in case anyone uses my builds as a template for how theirs should be. And then lastly, we have an aeroplane. Warlord Games do actually make a World War II based fighter game that I'm very tempted to try as a consequence of this. Quite like it. It's a shame though that so much of this is made out of metal, because metal paint just chips so easily. I've painted this fighter myself, and every time I look at it, I'm looking at new areas I'm going to need to put more paint on again. It's like the submarine all over again. Talking of which, here's a few different Cruel Seas ships next to each other for scale. We'll put one of the British Vespers in there just to really demonstrate the lower end of the spectrum. But yeah, they look pretty cool together. Here's the Flagship once again, with the 88 up front. I think these weapons are correctly placed, so, you know, feel free to copy or correct me. Next up, let's have a gander at the Minesweeper. There we go. Slide it along. Choo choo. Or, sorry, that's not the noise boats make, is it? Broom broom. You know, my painting skills aren't excellent, but it looks quite smart as it is. I still need to do more than just the base colours and constantly repainting all the chipped metal components. Here we have a close-up of one of the latter war S-boats with one of its friends there. Again, pretty certain I've got the weapons correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. And lastly, in terms of boats for now, let's have a quick look at the originals. And just pop in these images in here to give anyone that is having any trouble assembling their boats a guide. And also just to show off the boats in a more finished state, though obviously your results may well be better than these. Here's the fleet together. Looks relatively smart. None of my scenery is designed for oceans. These are just Warhammer hills. But I'm pretty pleased with the things that I've got from for Cruel Seas so far. I've really enjoyed painting ships. Not a thing I've done before. Here are some upcoming releases for the Germans that I'm looking forward to. I really want some F-lighters. They're pretty neat. And that's the German fleet for now. Well, actually, this is all of my stuff for now. But thanks for watching. If you want to support my channel, there is a Patreon and there is a PayPal. If you want to see my gaming reviews, there's another channel. Look for Rebus Forever. But for now, and until I get a good amount of gameplay done for Battlefleet Gothic, good luck and fair seas to any players of Cruel Seas, and toodle pip.